there was nothing lukewarm about this wonderful person. When he was on the dark side, he was all the way on the dark side. The moment he realized that God existed, that he was offering him salvation, he completely abandoned the previous life. And that doesn't mean he didn't struggle. He struggled for many, many years. He all of a sudden developed this kind of a rebellion and hatred for the evil one, who he was really aware of the fact that he controlled his life. So he wanted to completely break free from him. And this is what really got to me. One day he was just in the desert talking to his disciples, and he stood up and he told everybody to run and hide because the robbers, the murderers were coming and they were going to kill everybody. So his disciples, knowing how holy Saint Moses the Black was and prophetic, they knew that whatever he was saying, it was going to come true, but they didn't understand this kind of casual announcement. And they asked him, well, what about you? And he said, oh, for me, it says, I prayed for this moment. I've been waiting for this moment all my life.
This is Jonathan Peugeot. Welcome to the Symbolic World. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Yelena Popovic, and most of you will have seen A Man of God that came out in 2021, I think. It was a beautiful film about Saint Nektarios. And most recently, and soon to come out, I think it's coming out at the beginning of next year, is Moses the Black. And so I was so surprised when I saw this most recent project, so I cannot wait to talk to Yelena about how did this project come together? So thanks for talking to me.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm just going to say the film is coming out this year in January.
That's right. We are in the new year.
We already January.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you caught me at the end of the holidays is what's happened here.
I know. I can't even believe it myself. So I also get confused with dates.
And so I think this is your second movie that is kind of diving into more Orthodox imagery. Man of God was, I think, quite successful. It came out during COVID. I saw it. I remember seeing it in Montreal, and the reaction of almost everyone I talked to was quite positive about the movie. But this new movie is so different, and so I really would like to hear the story about how it is that you came to this project.
Yeah, you did watch it, right?
Yes, I did. I did.
Okay, I'm glad. Thank you for doing that. Well, like with Man of God, I was also asked many times the question of why Saint Nektarios, especially I'm originally from Serbia, and I would get the questions like, how come you didn't pick a Serbian saint? And I say, well, saints, they don't have nationalities. First of all, it's like we are all, there is no, we all equal in the eyes of God. So, and that's the beauty of our faith. But the same with Saint Nektarios. I had a very, very, I was very moved when I read about Saint Moses the Black. And this happened actually before I was shooting Man of God. I don't remember exact year, but I think somewhere around 2018 or 19, that's where I knew about him, but that's when I read again the story in more detail. And I had the same feeling, maybe as an artist, that's what we do. We kind of maybe get inspired by certain things. That's usually some things that are within us. I'm not saying that I have holy things inside of me. I'm talking about, as an artist, some kind of experiences that speak to us on a more personal level than some other ones. And what I can think about in this particular case, what really moved me was the way Saint Moses died. That's when I got the goosebumps and felt like I wanted to tell his story. And when I read that, it's been people that maybe are not familiar that much with the story, he was a very violent gang leader in the 4th century in Egypt. And we don't have, we have enough information to know about him. He's a very well-respected desert father. He was the spiritual son of Saint Nektarios of Egypt, who was the spiritual son of Saint Anthony the Great. So this is the level of spirituality we're talking about, and therefore he's also quoted today in Philokalia in many places together with Saint Nektarios of Egypt. So in that sense, it's is a saint that it's very well known and respected in Orthodox tradition. But what interests me about him was this life, that he was extremely violent person who was feared for the violence and brutality that he displayed. And at one point, it seems that as if he killed a government official, and therefore there was a bounty on his head. They were just simply going to kill him. And he had to run and hide. And in his own worldly wisdom at the time, he decided to hide next to the monastery where Saint Abba Isidore was an abbot at the time, because thinking who's going to be looking for him there, right? And it was precisely at that moment that God had spoken to his heart, and he had a sudden change of heart where he addressed the brotherhood, and he was very honest. He told them who he was. He told them that he was being chased, and he asked them to receive him in the brotherhood, not to hide him from the imminent death, but to save his soul. And what's incredible about him, what really moved me, is that there was nothing lukewarm about this wonderful person. When he was on the dark side, he was all the way on the dark side. The moment he realized that God existed, that he was offering him salvation, he completely abandoned the previous life. And that doesn't mean he didn't struggle. He struggled for many, many years under the Saint Abba Isidore. And many times he thought of leaving. In a sense, he thought that it was too much for him, because he all of a sudden developed this kind of a rebellion and hatred for the evil one, who he was really aware of the fact that he held him, he controlled his life, so he wanted to completely break free from him. And where even Abba Isidore at one point said, why are you stop fighting demons so much, as focused on the Lord and Christ. But he wanted to go one step further. He was like a little bit like Saint Anthony the Great, even though Saint Anthony didn't have that kind of past. On the contrary, but he wanted to conquer, with God's help, the devil here on earth. I mean, this is what really inspired me about him. And he just, there were some amazing things that happened in his life, that at one point, when he overcame all the obstacles, the evil one actually physically assaulted him. And after that, because he was incredibly physically strong, he lost his physical strength. But then he grew even furthermore in his spiritual strength, and became a priest, and became a spiritual father of the same monastery. Now when he was 74 years old, it was the year 405 of AD, he had 70 disciples, monks, and which somehow somewhere it was written that he used to have 70 gang members when he was living a different life many years before. And this is what really got to me, is one day he was just in the desert talking to his disciples, and he stood up and he told everybody to run and hide, because the robbers, the murderers, were coming and they were going to kill everybody. So his disciples, knowing how holy Saint Moses the Black was, and prophetic, they knew that whatever he was saying, it was going to come true, but they didn't understand this kind of casual announcement. And they asked him, well, what about you? And he said, oh, for me, it says, I prayed for this moment. I've been waiting for this moment all my life, because I want to glorify my Lord and my Savior, Jesus Christ, and I want to die glorifying his words, that who takes the sword must die by the sword. And that's between me and God, but you don't have to go through this. This is not something that you have to do, so please leave. So everybody left, apart from 7 brave monks who decided to stay with him. one of them in the last minute, probably by the providence of God, so we would have it all. We would
Yeah,
know
the
what
story.
happened
You would
at
have the
that
story.
moment. He couldn't do it. He hid somewhere in the cave, but he witnessed. I mean, Saint Moses the Black and the 6 other martyrs were martyred that day, and the monk who couldn't go through with it, he came out and he witnessed. Actually, he saw our Lord giving the crowns of glory to each one of their souls.
Hmm.
I was just blown away by this bravery, by this freedom that this incredible man, who nobody would have thought, like if you knew him when he was in his 20s and 30s doing so many terrible things, who would have known that this man possesses such incredible beauty in his heart, and that he was able to give his heart to God and become very brave, and he was willing to become martyr for Christ. And to
Mm.
me, that was just fascinating. And that's when I had this same feeling, like with Saint Nectarios. I had a feeling that this story of redemption could potentially help a lot of people today, nowadays, or at any time. First, starting for myself, and then going with everybody else, and that's how I start writing the treatment, and that
Hmm.
was in 2018. So
Okay, so you've been working on this for quite a while. Yeah, it's funny because in the past 5 years, I've actually met several people that are trying to do a Moses the Black movie, because I think there's an intuition. You had it probably before everyone else about how relevant this story is and how powerful he is as a figure. And so you crossed the finish line before everyone else. Congratulations on that, for
no,
sure.
no, I can say thank Saint Moses.
Mm.
I've done this. I believe. I'm not saying that the other people didn't have the same inspiration from the right source, but for whatever reason, I he helped me to
Mhm.
cross the finish line.
Greetings, friends, cosmographers, fellow symbolists. This is Joshua from Eighth Day Books, inviting you to join me in studying a remarkable cosmic coincidence. Why is it that writers, philosophers, and prophets from many times and places have all told us that contemplating the night sky makes our own souls similarly more beautiful and more ordered? Hebrew and Hindu, Greek and Chinese, they've all told us that looking up is the same as looking in, and that we are as much citizens of the sky as we are of Earth. In February, we will be looking at Pythagorean folk tales, biblical wisdom literature, and contemporary novelists to ask these questions. It'll be a challenging course, but not technical. I teach medieval philosophy and Renaissance literature, and I'm condensing a year's worth of information into a few wonder-filled hours. Please join me for some Plato, some poetry, and some practical sky gazing, all to help us pursue the art of imitating heaven. See you very soon.
So this is the thing, though. So the movie is not a movie of the story of Saint Moses the Black. Now, this is what people have to understand, is that this is a gangster movie. It's like basically like a Black American gangster movie. There, two, pretty famous rappers play characters in it. Wiz Khalifa, what is the name of the other rap?
Cueto.
Quato, yeah, who plays the kind of the bad guy, or
Right,
the
right, that's right.
the evil. I mean, they're all kind of bad. Everybody's kind of bad
Yes,
in the
yes,
movie, but
nobody's
he
good at
plays
that.
the rival. He plays the rival. Let's say it that way. And so the main narrative happens in the modern world. It's it's in Chicago. It's a modern gang story. My biggest surprise was that Father Turbo Qualls was in it, which he never told me. Like, I have great affection for Father Turbo. He never told me he's in this movie. And it was in
Really?
the trailer. I saw the trailer on Instagram, and like, what, Father Turbo is the priest in this film? So now you have to explain why. Like, how did you come to this? Because obviously St. Moses' story is one thing, but making this into like a kind of modern gangster movie is a whole other story. It has to be.
Definitely, and I will. And there is that's a great question, and this is how I will definitely be happy to explain how I came to that conclusion. When I start writing a treatment around 2018, even though I was very fired up and inspired, so to say, I would write a treatment. I write 20, 30 pages, but first of all, I am a writer and director, and I've said this a couple of times. I approach these things, even though I'm an Orthodox Christian. Faith is very important part of my life. I mean, it's the most important part. I wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for my faith. But that's my relationship with God, my personal thing. But I approach this project as a craftsman. I've learned my craft in a really good school. It's called Playhouse West, and especially if I'm going to tackle a subject like this, and as you know very well yourself, to make films about saints or anything that it's spiritual in our modern world, it's going to be looked under a magnifying glass. So if we don't make a film that it's very good film, right off the bat, you're gonna get to think, oh, it's another film about faith, and it's not good. And unfortunately, this is what people think about films about faith. Some of them are deserving of that comment. Some of them are not, but that's usually what's going on out there because of the society we live in. So for me, even with Man of God, the first thing was like, I really want to make a great movie. They might not like the subject, they might not like the story I'm telling, but no one's going to be able to say, oh, it's a terrible movie. So this is the first responsibility that I feel as a craftsman, as a director and writer. That's where I start from. So on that note, when I was writing the treatment, there's so many events in his life. They're wonderful. But to tell a story, there's one thing of writing a documentary or filming a documentary, but writing a feature film, you really have to pick a premise that what is this really about? Like even with Man of God, I had to ask myself, I could make 10 movies about Saint Nektarios, but what kind of film I'm telling about him? So it was mostly, to me, the premise of Saint Nektarios was about the fact that the unhealthy desire for power and riches ruin one's soul, which is not a secret, but that was somehow if you look at every scene, that premise is in every scene. And in that way, I feel that way his faith, his incredible faith and love for God really came to the surface in the movie, and it was able to be shared with the world. And this is how I saw it with Man of God. With this one, I was asking, then I had to ask myself, first I'm starting, so I'm putting down everything and I'm looking. So to me, it looked like it was a little bit all over the place. It wasn't specific. It wasn't clear what kind of film I was making. And as a writer, and I know this, and if I go in that direction, what's going to happen? No one's going to care. Even though I might think I'm making a film about Moses the Black, Saint Moses the Black, and his story is amazing. Well, other people don't know about him, so it's my job to make a story that people can relate to, a story where Saint Moses can then do the work. A story that is going to inspire people. Well, the story that I was writing in the 4th century, to be honest, even though I was doing a lot of rewrites, it didn't look to me like a feature film that I feel that I could honestly look investors in the eyes and say to them, I think I have a good film here that can move people and change people's lives. So I kind of put it on the side, even though I was very inspired. And then I was puzzled by this whole thing for a while. Then I thought maybe my creative juices were not flowing properly because I'm about to film the movie. So maybe that's what's going on. And it was after I finished Man of God, there were a couple of things that happened that inspired me. One was when the monks from Holy Monastery of Vatopedi, because they were the Vatopedi really was one of the main producers on the film of Man of God, and they helped for the film to come to tuition here on the Ephraim. But a couple of the monks that I'm friendly with, they asked me, well, are you thinking about any other project? And I said, well, to be honest, I would like to make a film about Saint Moses the Black, but I don't know why I'm a little bit stuck in the process. So they asked me, says, do you want to meet with Father Theotimus? I said, who is Father Theotimus? Says, there is a priest in Athens. He's from Congo. and he's a Greek Orthodox priest. His sister, she's a nun. I don't know. I think her name is Tekla. She saw Saint Moses the Black. He appeared to her, and she painted his icon. And I said, of course, I would like to meet his father. Theotimus, let's arrange the meeting right away. So what happened? They reached out to him because, they probably, I'm a filmmaker. Sometimes it's, especially in the world, in the church, my job is like, I'm just a filmmaker. I hopefully with my work can inspire people to seek the truth and to come. So sometimes it's easier if somebody like that would call the father instead of me going there. So they called him, and he was very happy to meet with me. And when I met with him, he told me the story about his sister, told me how his whole family became Orthodox, how he came to Greece. And his sister at the time was deciding whether she was going to become a nun or not. And she was on the island of Kalymnos. And she was in this female monastery. And the abbess, because she had a great skill of painting, the abbess, and being from Congo, so abbess asked her, well, why don't you paint the icon of St. Moses the Black? So, and this is how Father Theotimus tells me about his sister. He says, my sister, she's got a little bit of a temper. So she went back to her room and she was like talking to herself. And she said, well, just because I'm Black, like what, I'm supposed to paint icon of St. Moses the Black? Like, what do I know about? He's lived in the 4th century. Are you joking? That was her reaction. Yeah. So in her own like moment of like rebellion, right? She kind of looked up and she said, St. Moses, you know what? I'm not going to paint your icon unless you show me what you look like. So of course she didn't think much of it. Where I don't know how many, I don't remember. I wasn't told whether it was weeks or months or days. When did that happen? But if you're in Greece, if it's not summer, I mean, these islands like ghost towns, and this was not during the summer. So she was there doing her chores, and one day a monk, old, elderly Black monk in the black long robe comes in, walks straight up to her and starts speaking in Swahili, in her own language. So she is starting to converse with him, like not thinking much about it. And again, father tells me, my sister's got a temper. So after a while, she felt a little, she felt like, I don't know what he was asking her, what kind of conversation was going on. But she was compelled to look at him and say, excuse me, who are you? What do you want from me? Because she's being a female novice at the monastery. And he told her, says, well, what do you mean, what do I want from you? Didn't you ask me to come and show you what I look like before you wanted to paint my icon? So for I don't know how many seconds, he was still in front of her. And after that, he disappeared. And she went and she painted, and I would...
Is this the icon in the movie?
His icon? No, it's not the icon in the movie, but it's this icon. I will show it to the viewers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Nice.
And he gives me, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Father Theotimus pulls out, this is the copy of the icon.
Yeah.
And he hands it to me. Believe me. Now, think about this. I'm live in Los Angeles for 18 years. I'm from Serbia. I'm talking to Father Theotimus from Congo, and I'm receiving this icon. I knew at that moment, something told me, okay, I guess it's going to be another battle, because man of God was the battle. But I asked St. Moses, if you really want me to do this, you're really going to have to help me, because I'm stuck. I don't know what's happening here. So at this point, I get invited to another monastery in Evia, monastery dedicated to Saint David of Evia. And Saint Iakovos Tsilikis is buried in the monastery as well. And Yeronda Gavril is the Yeronda, abbot of the monastery, a wonderful, wonderful abbot. So he invited me because, Man of God at that point, there was now a couple of years later, Man of God came out and it was huge success in Greece. So I was invited, which I get a lot of these kind of requests. Yeronda wanted to meet with me, even though I was many times in the monastery. I love the monastery, but this time I was staying overnight. So he was trying to ask me if I could write a script about St. Iakovos Tsilikis, because there were some investors that wanted to do something. And I was very honest. I told him, Yeronda, I would love to do anything. I love saints. I love all of them. But All I can say, I can read about him again, and I'm going to have to feel if I connect to the story. Of course, I'm connected to the story. I'm connected to the story of every saint, but meaning to write a film, because not every story I can, I mean, everybody is connected to something. Again, I'm talking about as an artist, like is this something that I can deliver? It doesn't mean somebody else cannot deliver, but I was being honest to him. I said, I don't know if I can deliver this. I will read it, but if I don't deliver, then I'm going to find somebody who can do it. And he was, no. I want you to. So he takes me downstairs. Now this is before we have to go to sleep, and it's dark and it's pretty cold. And he says, no, you're going to sit here in front of the tomb of Aios Iakovos and just pray to him. And he gave me the blanket to cover myself. So I was, this is, of course, I'm going to be obedient, and I'm grateful. If anything, it's amazing to sit there in peace and to pray to God, to saints. I mean, how much better you can get. But in my own mind, in a way, if I can say this, I told to St. Iakovos, I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know what am I exactly supposed to pray for. But it was particularly at that moment, while I was thinking about different things and praying, that I saw vividly. I saw Chicago, because naturally St. Moses is in my mind, because that's what I want to do. I saw Chicago. I saw the funeral. I saw the shootout. I've seen parts of the film. And I was like, and this, I really credit this to Jelena, who's very holy, because even though he was being cheeky and telling me to sit there and pray, but what it really led to, for me to resolve to get this proper guidance on how I should do the film about St. Moses. And this is what had happened that day. And after that, I realized something else. I said, wow, this now is a film that can be told. This is where I believe that if I can do this properly, St. Moses can then be introduced into this new world, into a different world, and inspire a lot of people. But in order to do that, then I had to do a lot of research, and I had to go and meet with people from inner city of Chicago, from west side of Chicago in particular, where the film is about. And I feel blessed I was blessed to have met a gentleman called Reginald Akeem Berry, who was incarcerated for 17 years. He was one of the chiefs on one of the big gangs many, many years ago in Chicago. He was in prison for many years. He was in solitary confinement for 9 years in inhumane environment. And he's been out now for 17 years helping people not to fall into destructive lifestyle. So this is who I met through one of our investors, Greek-American investor. His name is Alex Pisios. He's one of our main investors. And he introduced me. He's good friends with Reggie, with Akeem. And when I met Reggie, I presented St. Moses. I showed him, usually I would carry this little booklet that we get at the Fellowship of St. Moses the Black. Mm-hmm. And I told him the story of St. Moses. And I told him that I already had about 60 pages written down. The name of the character was called the man. The girl was called the girl. But I already had some dialogue, the grandmother. I already had things down. But I told him, I need somebody to help me to tell an honest story about the gangster. Because if the story of the gangster is not honest, then the story of St. Moses is not going to be able to penetrate in the same way, because the truth is what I believe that speaks volumes. And it's, if we are truthful, I believe then hopefully God can bless our efforts and what we do. So this is what happened. And thanks to, I call them my brothers and sisters from the west side of Chicago that I've met many times with, they've also, at the end of the whole script, they've also made sure that my dialogue was in the slang. I don't use all the words that you've heard, that this is their slang. They just converted it into their slang. I respectfully asked them if they can keep certain words to a minimum, but not to lose the truthfulness of the thing. But we don't want to, and what's interesting, they said to me, thank you. I mean, we like the fact that you asked us to do that, because when we see supposedly ourselves in the movies, we don't really talk like that. Like, yes,
Yeah.
maybe we say bad words here and there, but it's not as excessive as they portray us. So interestingly enough, that came out when we were working together. So thanks to them, and obviously number one, thanks to St. Moses the Black, I was able to put a really good script together that inspired then Wiz Khalifa, 50 Cent, and other Omar Epps and other people, because they realized that this is a story of redemption, story that it's very necessary to be told nowadays, story that can resonate with many people on many different levels, and it can be helpful to the society. And this is why these people became part of the movie.
Yeah, I have to say that the slang element was very marked for me because, I'm a French Canadian, English is my second language. And although I have lived in the US quite a bit, there were moments where I had to like go on the Urban Dictionary to know like what they were saying, because there were some words were kept being repeated, and I was like, what is that? What are they referring to? And so I have to confess my my very kind of Canadian background. But it did for that reason, like you said, it felt like this was when I saw that you had written it, I was surprised, because I when I was watching, I was like, for sure this is written by someone from that culture, because of the slang was so much part of the storytelling. And so so I think in that case you definitely did a surprising work. And so I'm curious. I mean, I'm kind of curious to know, because obviously the movie's not out yet. You probably had people watch it, because the one big question I had when I was watching it was, Man of God, it's clear who that movie's for. Like, as an Orthodox Christian, I come see it. I think it is for everyone. This movie, it was like, this is a weird movie in the sense that I've never seen something like this. If there's another movie like it, I was trying to recall, and I don't think I have a version of it.
Well,
and so,
Pulp Fiction, even though this has nothing to do with this, when it came out, you haven't seen it.
You say, I've never seen something like this, because it is a gang, like it's clearly a gang movie, and I could see it has precedents, like there are precedents for these kinds of of gang movies, but because of the interspersing of the story of St. Moses, and kind of the way that the redemption story happens, because I don't want to spoil anything in the movie, but this is not the type of redemption story that people are used to seeing in a Hollywood setting.
Yeah,
right?
I would call it like flowery redemption.
Yes, flowery redemption. Yes, it's not
a real redemption.
it's not a there isn't this sense of breaking free and then going on, and it's like, no, it's a much harsher redemption. And so I'm just curious to hear like some of the reactions from different people that have been watching it, like even from the people like 50 Cent, Wiz Khalifa, the people that are in the movie. Like, what is their take on this story?
Well, to me, the most important thing, and this is going to be connected, my answer is that people that live that life, or they lived, or they still live this life, can see themselves in it, and that it will inspire them to change. This was the number one thing that I wanted to achieve with this film. So everybody else, that they can still find something in it, and it's an exciting movie to watch, but it's really the case is people that don't believe that they can be forgiven for things they have done. And I'm gonna give you one example. When I was talking to Father Paul Abernathy from Pittsburgh, he is the pastor in the Orthodox Church of St. Moses the Black, and they have an excellent it's a neighborhood resilience program. They do a lot of work to get people off the streets and get them away from the life of crime. There was one gentleman there. This was before I spoke to my executive producer now, Reginald Kimberry in Chicago. There was one gentleman there that was in the gangs, and many of them were, but now they're no longer. And what they do in Pittsburgh, in a neighborhood resilience program, they do a really dangerous work. They go on the street and they do these interventions with young gangsters. And this is something, because the young gangsters will not respond to anybody other than a former gangster. They're not gonna, you're not gonna be able to convince and to approach a young gangster unless you had a past as a gangster. So that's why usually people that have had that kind of past are the best people to speak to these young guys and men and women, and to convince them, hopefully, to give up that lifestyle, and to make them understand that they have the soul that's really valuable, and that dying at 19, 20, 21, going the way that they're usually going, it's not the way to go. So one of these gentlemen, his name is Antoine. I mean, I don't know if I should, but he's what Father Paul told me, and we had the same discussion. That this is within the same question that you've asked me. He asked me, it's interesting when you're talking to me about the redemption that you want to place in this film, that kind of matches the redemption of St. Moses the Black. It's interesting, when I spoke to my friend Antoine, I asked him sometimes, why do you, I noticed every, like 3 times a week, they would go end up in they would throw themselves in very dangerous situations. But particularly this gentleman, he would go out of his way to, like, fearlessly go and get in the middle of even a gunfight to like prevent it and to stop the gun violence. And Father told me, I pulled him aside. I said, Antoine, why do you do this? And he said, in a very humble way, he said, Father, because saying sorry sometimes is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where people that have lived that kind of life, or lived that kind of life, the story will resonate, because redemption here is very deep. And many times I've spoken to a lot of pastors that heard a lot of confessions from the young gangsters or people that have changed their lives, is that the hardest thing for them to believe is that they can be forgiven. They just have a very hard time with the fact that they actually can be forgiven for what they have done. So this is why I have chosen to make the film like this, because I'm trying to reach them. I'm trying to reach these souls. Many of them are wonderful, just like St. Moses the Black was, but they don't know any better. And this is why I made a movie like this. So I don't know. Hopefully this answers the question.
No, I think it does. But it is, I mean, it is surprising. It is surprising in the sense that, I mean, I think it's also because of the people involved. Some of these people, they are gangster personas. Like, they have gangster personas. I don't know about their real life or whatever, but they inhabit that kind of persona. And so, because the movie is about the redemption, or the possible redemption, that's why in some ways even that makes me curious. It's like it's an anti-gangster movie, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, we forget sometimes. I'm privileged to live a life, at least right now. I'm healthy. I don't live within the reach of gun violence. I can go to church anytime I like. Have somewhat of a peaceful, hopefully, progress. And it's never peaceful. You get a lot of opposition from inside and out all the time when you're on the spiritual path. But now I lost my train of. I was trying to say something. Forgive me. But yeah, this is what I wanted to say. But we forget something. Our Lord Jesus Christ, he sat many times and ate with harlots and sinners, and he's still sitting and eating with harlots and sinners. So let's not forget about that. So sometimes and that's what I'm at least trying for myself, not to become, and this is something that Father Moses Berry told me when I went to get a blessing from him to make the film.
Oh, really? Wow, I didn't know that.
I met with him. I went with the Father Justin Matthews to South Missouri, and it was for Father Paul Abernathy that initiated all that. And he gave me his blessing. But one thing he told me, and I remember, He said, you see the icon of Saint Moses, the black icon of Saint Mary of Egypt, not to mention, as you know, in Orthodoxy, we dedicate the whole week, 50 week
Yeah, Saint Mary.
of the Great Lent is dedicated to Saint Mary of Egypt, this incredible story of repentance. But it says a lot of people, like, for example, they don't realize they come and venerate the icon of Saint Mary of Egypt, Saint Moses the Black. But they just think about them after the fact, after like they obviously, when we venerate the icons, we venerate the Holy Spirit that glorify them, that sanctify them. But when we don't worship, that's what people don't understand Orthodoxy. We only worship God. We just venerate and respect the saints. But it's like what Father Moses, who also himself is from south side of Chicago and was in prison at one point in his life, and then he came and he was freed, and then he was in his own journey to find God, and became Orthodox priest. He said to me, just please remember this. A lot of people come to me today and they're very happy with how I am, and they love what I do. But I am not just what I am today. What I am is what I was before and what I am today. The same thing goes for Saint Moses the Black. What's incredible about him is that he had this incredible repentance. And without his life, that doesn't mean that we have to live a life of a gangster to have repentance so we can be saved. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But he said, these people, their life has to be looked at as a whole, to be fully understood and fully venerated. So and then he said, so people that come to church and venerate Saint Moses the Black and Saint Mary of Egypt, but they see a gangster or a harlot and judge them, they should not really be doing that. They're missing the point. So this is I know it's a little bit hardcore what I'm saying, but it is the truth. So that comes to what Saint Moses himself, one of the most amazing, he said many things that are recorded and written down, but one of the main things, beautiful things that he said that one who sees his own sin doesn't see sin in another. So that's how we know how high spiritually we progress in our life. That doesn't mean that we won't be bothered by certain things, by certain people. It's normal. But if we judge others, judging is something else, that means that we are not really seeing ourselves properly. And that's just a check for us to kind of pay attention to what's going on inside of ourselves.
Yeah. And there is, in the story of St. Moses, there's some interesting little tidbits where he kind of, how can I say this? There are moments where he's able to turn his gangster persona, to the service of the other monks. And this whole accidental stopping of the robbers where he didn't really do anything. We don't know exactly what he did, but he was able to stop a band of robbers from robbing the monastery. Yeah, exactly.
He used his force.
He kind of suggests that he really didn't, they just tripped it, like I didn't really do anything, but
he overpowered them, and he brought him in front of the abbot, dropped them, and he said, I'm like lowest of the low. I can't judge nobody. You decide their fate. So yes, he.
And there's still, I hear this is from a Coptic priest, so he can take the responsibility for his story. But he tells me that the relics of St. Moses are in Egypt. They're visited by Christian and Muslims. People wait in line to come and visit the relics. And there's a monk who sits next to the relic. The sarcophagus is huge. He was a giant. Who knows how big he was a giant. Yes. And he sits in front of the relics and he whispers to Saint Moses when people come and bring their petitions. And he tells me that the whole tomb starts to shake. And people get healed, by Saint Moses. So there's still a little bit of gangster.
It's a gangster way.
It's like this huge sarcophagus just starts shaking when people come and ask for his, ask to be healed from their illnesses.
He's a great saint, a great saint. And speaking of Father Turbo, now you asked me what happened to Father Turbo.
Yeah, seriously.
I met Father, and I had this idea. As a matter of fact, it was a friend of mine. His name is Ferris. He did a videography in. On the set, he did quite a few interviews. He gave me that idea, and I'm like, well, I know Father Turbo quite well, so I took him up on it, and I called Father Turbo, and I was shy about it. I said, Father, I have a maybe forgive me if my question is a little bit unorthodox. If it's completely inappropriate, just please forgive me and ignore it. Don't even forget about the fact that I even asked you, but I need to ask you, would you be interested to play an Orthodox priest in the movie? I mean, you would be playing, there's nothing in your role, which, as you could see, I mean, you're just playing the priest. And he said, yeah, sure, I
Yeah.
would. Well, let me read the script first. I'm like, really? He says, no, yeah, of course I have to get a blessing from my bishop. He's Serbian. I'm Serbian. So he's, you know how we I'm sure he's
Sure,
gonna be okay with it. I'm like, great. And he said, but send me the script. So I sent him the script, and he was in London at the time. So I was waiting patiently. So I remember he texted me. He said, good stuff. I want to do it. So I'm like, okay, let me just at least speak to him. So when he was back, I said, Father, so you really want to do this? He says, absolutely. He said, the script is real. And because it's real, I want to do it. Otherwise, no one's going to care. And this was his answer. And when he also interviewed me, and there's something I can quote him, because I say to people, this is not for very young, there is a language, there is, I wouldn't, under 14 or 15, I wouldn't go and see this film, but because of the violence and some language. But he said, I said it's probably going to be R-rated, and he stopped. He says, let me stop you there, because I'm giving my seal of approval. I read the script. I've seen what you've done. It's R-rated, but it's R-rated. It's double R for real repentance. For real repentance. This is what it said. It's a double R for real repentance. I'm like, so I'm giving my seal of approval. I'm like, Father, and it's all. And he's done a great, amazing job. Omar Epps, who is an incredible actor, he told me, Yelena, did he ever act before? Because he was so real. He was so there. I said, no, he's not. He hasn't, but he's really done a fantastic job. So
yeah, and there's a little scene like where, I get the sense that you really did it on purpose. There's a little scene where the shot picks up all his tattoos that are kind of coming out of the sleeve of his, of his vestment, and it makes you feel like, okay, this priest has a story which would make him understand Omar Epps' character. Like he has a history. There's something there, and so that you immediately kind of see the connection, like a deeper possible connection between the two characters. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And there was we obviously filmed in an Orthodox church, but there was a shot that we needed to pick up of Omar walking to the church. And we didn't film at that particular church because there were better options to shoot it for lighting purposes and the way it looked outside. Yeah. So it was not an Orthodox church, the one that we shot.
Yeah. But the outside's not an Orthodox.
But then the father in there was a Baptist church. So this is an amazing story. I can share this with you. Incredible priest, and he was really humble. And then I come in with Reginald Akimberry, who was he's got a very deep faith, but he's a ex-chief and gangster, and he's still wearing some of the, I don't know what's on his t-shirts. So the father sees him, and you should have seen the encounter between them two. And I'm just standing there, and he goes like, "Excuse me, what is that on your chest?" And Reggie's just kind of, "Oh, it's nothing. It's just," and then the father just looking at him like this. So it turns out that the father of this church, the priest of the church, that he was in the gang before, and he was in a rival gang.
He was in a rival gang.
And therefore he knew exactly. So after that they spoke, and it was all good. And he also was interviewed. Ferris interviewed him as well, and he gave an amazing interview saying that he's been a pastor for over 20-30 years, and he says, I was on the streets, I was doing terrible things, and if God can save me, he can save anybody. So that's another example. So there are a lot of people out there that have amazing stories. And St. Moses the Black, I mean, I don't know, you're telling me about what's happening in Egypt in the monastery, but there are a lot of stories of his appearances here in the U.S. And it usually happens with people, they're incarcerated or they're going through a lot of trouble, that he appears quite often to people it's been recorded and people talk about that.
Yeah, that makes sense that he would appear in America. And so tell me a little bit, how is this going to come out? Like, can people see this? What's the distribution?
Well, the film is coming out on January 30th. For me, I go by Serbian calendar. That's like Russian or in Mount Athos. So January 30th falls on Saint Anthony the Great. I love Saint Anthony the Great. So that kind of it's special to me. So it's coming out on January 30th. And it's going to be in theaters nationwide in the United States. It's first coming out in the United States, and we're hoping to have it obviously in Canada and Europe. I know Greece will see it, I believe, first week of April. Serbia would like to release it on middle of March, but Middle East has already bought the film. The West Africa wants to release it. So it's going to be worldwide, but it's first starting here because it's a story of a gangster in Chicago, and I think that's why it's probably the best to start in the U.S. and hopefully it's gonna. But also, I want to say this: the tickets are on sale already. So please, I want to let your audience know that it's very important that we. If people can buy the tickets, they're available everywhere at Fandango, AMC, Regal, Cinemark, all the major platforms. And if people can get tickets, and more tickets we sell, the longer the film is going to stay in the theaters. So please support the film. Tickets are already on sale, and the film is coming out on the 30th of January nationwide in the United States.
All right. Well, you heard Yelena. Go and get your tickets in advance. That way, the film can have a long stay in the cinema and can hopefully have as much impact as it can have, and through the blessing of Saint Moses as well. And so maybe we can finish. After doing Man of God and these two projects, in some ways are very different from each other. What is your next vision? What are you working on? If you can share it.
Well, I can. There are a couple of things floating. There is another saint that I am intrigued by. He died. He was martyred in the United States in '80s. His name is Saint John of Santa Cruz. I'm quite fascinated with his story. I'm starting to develop the script. There is a script out there about Saint Seraphim of Sorrow that I feel. I would like to dive into. I think, Saint Seraphim of Sorrow and also Saint Seraphim Rose. That's what I wanted to say.
Oh, Saint Seraphim, a movie on Seraphim Rose.
Saint Seraphim Rose, which is really, really amazing. I think there's so many great stories out there. And again, it doesn't mean I'm going to direct them all, and obviously I'm here to help others as well, talented writers and directors that they maybe have some good ideas about stories of the saints that can be told in our contemporary world with the purpose of telling some wonderful stories that can inspire people, help people, and make some good films, that at the same time. So I'm hoping that this will open the doors for me as well, not only for me, but also for other people to do the same. But there's so many great, stories of the saints are incredible. There is a Saint Theodora of Alexandria that's another incredible story. I don't know if you know her story, but there's a lady who she was married and then she, I believe, cheated on her husband, and she felt so terrible about it that she ran away to the monastery, and he didn't even know where she was for so many years. And then she ended up going to the monastery pretending she was a man. And she lived in the monastery until she died, and she experienced an incredible persecution. And they found out she was a woman only after her repose. That's to me like incredible story as well to tell. So there's so many amazing story of the saints that's. So
we'll definitely be looking forward to see what it is that you come up with next.
And what's interesting about the reason I think about stories of the saints are powerful, because there are people that lived. Some of them long ago, some of them not that long ago. And I feel that we can relate to their lives, because there were people like us that just they made different choices than most of us, but they certainly, to me, they always gave me courage and strength to carry on. And that's why I think these stories are very important.
Well, Yelena, thanks so much. Thanks for your time and thanks for your vision. And everybody, pay attention and go get your ticket. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.